Everything should be, that should be that should be the gauge. Everything now,
Yeah.
when you have a lot of kids, when we had 6 kids, we had to have some work.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't have order, you'd have kids hanging from the rafter, right? And then not only do we have kids, we had neighbors' kids coming, so nieces and nephews. So you have to have a sense of order. You have to have it. Now, with that, you cannot be so rigid that children are going to talk. They're going to ask questions. They're very inquisitive. Having an understanding, that means that you even have to question that you're looking at for the homeostasis of your home. So what do you need to do? You and your wife have to have a game plan. You both have to have an understanding. There's checks and balances. If I'm being too harsh, you would tell me. And then it comes to a point where I have to because if, again, it goes back to the foundation. If we're both trying to please God,
Right.
if we're both trying to love God, we're going to not only love ourselves, but we're going to love his people. We're going to love those that belong to him. And so God has ways of speaking to us.
Right.
God, his word governs us.
Right.
His word tells us, with loving kindness have I drawn thee. When Jesus says, suffer a child to come unto me, suffer not a child to come unto me. He's right. He
come in me. Suffer children to come in, forbid them not.
Forbid them not. So if Jesus invited children, there must be something to children that brings delight to God.
Right.
And then the Bible talks about he takes care of children and fools. If God, that's a special place. So there's a concern, and then having the awareness that children are not all intelligent.
Right. Age appropriately.
They're not. They don't know everything.
Yeah. They're cognitively age appropriately.
And even as they develop, they don't know everything.
Right.
It takes time. And so when you recognize, I recognize my responsibility. Number one, I recognize these are my children, and I am obligated, and I have a duty. I'm going to love my children, and I'm going to care for my children. That means I'm going to do the things that I nurture, that not so much nurture, but that I cultivate, and I don't bring harm to my children, and I do something. I'm not going to break them.
Right.
Even if I'm broken.
Right.
Because there's some things I still dealt with.
Right.
But I can't break them.
Right.
Because I have some broken areas.
Right. Yeah.
So that means that we talk.
Right.
We have conversations.
Right. And we tag team, like you said, if I'm being too lenient, and there's something I would do that is just too lenient, you still have the total responsibility to say, no, this is too lenient. This is what needs to be done.
Right.
And that's kind of like the movie The Shack, when, at the time, the guy had a woman as God, had a warrior, the warrior. So
it says, I got to be father now. You're going to be father.
Right. So there are times where it's like, I can't do it. And I would say no, but then there's the hard step.
Right. And it's, when you understand your roles within the dynamic of the family, everything runs smooth. When you understand your roles, and even in questioning intent is another thing. That's our responsibility, to always question our intent. What place are we coming from? So you don't want them to go because you don't want them to go, or you don't want them to go because you have a bad attitude. Hey, where are you coming from?
Are you pairing of your selfish desires, or do you have the child?
Right. Shut up, because I said so.
Yeah.
What is it that you don't want them to ask any questions? How about saying, I'm tired. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Can we talk about this a little later? Should I do it?
Opposite to selfishness.
So you have to question your motive and your intent.
Okay, so I'm going to stir you a curveball before we close out here, because it does get harder as they get older, and you don't have that command. Like, what can you lean on when your children are by teen and young adults, and there's conflict or there's disagreement? How do you do that? Because we've had 6,
yes,
and they all did what they were supposed to do, which is grow up and choose their direction. Josh, how do you still have dominion and be the father when something is not your choosing or liking, or
right?
how do you show up and how do you overcome that stage?
I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna tell you, I am still learning. I am learning that even in their bad decisions, that my position as a father is to be gracious. And there are some I've had to learn. There are some encounters and there's some lessons that my children are not going to escape, no matter how much I tell them certain things. That there is the lesson of experience now takes over.
Right.
Especially when children are able to make decisions, or when they're young adults
Right.
and they make decisions on their own.
Right.
There are lessons that there are platforms where I speak from where they will never get until they have children themselves.
Right.
There's positions that I will speak to them about the company that they keep. I can tell them and I can give them information. Sometimes their viewpoint are so clouded that they will go through experiences that they will learn through those experiences. My responsibility is to try to help them to have either a proper landing,
Or be there to help.
or be there to help them when they fall.
Yeah.
And so I can't just write them off because they're my children.
Right.
And so I have got to be able to advise. Now I move into the role of advisor. I move into the role of
Intercessor.
intercessor. Yeah, you got that right. My knees I got some calluses on my knees for praying for my children, to pray with my children. And so because it is, I I would say, for me, in this stage, especially in the development of a young people, in the young adult teenage area, especially when they can go drive and make decisions about their own personal life and their well-being. I think those are the more challenging periods for me, because I can't just tell them, do this, and they do it. I can't just tell them, hey, go over there and go sit down. Or because they're working, they're adults, they are starting to move into their own area. And that's not a workable solution. That's not a work, because they have their own thoughts. They could
Their lives. They have autonomy. Yeah.
exactly. And so now I'm learning to just try to discuss and talk and try to help them to think, use those processes of thinking to teach them how to be a chess player of life, to think 3, 4, 5 steps ahead when they make these decisions, to try to help them to recognize, to have social awareness, to help them to recognize, to have situational awareness, cultural awareness.
Right.
I try to advise and give them information that it touches up here. And if I can touch up here, yeah, I may pull a heartstring or two, but pulling a heartstring or two doesn't always determine the outcome of the decision that a person makes.
Right.
So I try to speak to there's the spirit
Right.
in them.
Right.
And so I try to speak to that standpoint. And then I have to speak to God. I really have to talk to God and ask God to step in, to protect them, to watch over them, to not allow them to get into situations that are just going to overwhelm them. And so I have to be able to use all those things that God has afforded me to have.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. That's great. My one of my excuse me, one of my closing questions, because I've had to answer your question. You did. I've had the privilege of watching you. How do you get someone to the point where they can unconditionally love their children? Because I've seen you restore our children after a fall or after they may have gone a different direction. How do you get someone there? Like, how do you get there? How do you do that? Because sometimes people are like Joe Jackson. They just want their kids to be perfect. They just want you, or you kicked out of the church, or you failed, or you shamed me, or you You're somebody I watch. I've seen it. I've seen people tell you after church that they're pregnant at the church, not at home. That's just one soft example, but I've seen you
After sermon.
after service in the pastor's office. So I've seen you still how do you keep your arms open? Because you do. Like sometimes I'm a thinker, and so I have to get my thoughts together on what's going on. But you immediately snap into the role of arms open, recovery, love. How do you do that?
Because remember, one thing I keep in mind, those are my children. God gave me them. The other thing is I think that I probably because of some of the stuff that I've gone through personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the things that I have encountered, which has afforded me to be much more gracious, because I don't want my children, how dare a father abandon their child? Abandonment, it's just, it's a rough thing. And so I have tried to exhibit or model what I am like. So
You do a good job of it. Like, and you do. Like, there has been disappointments or there has been things that, could shake the relationship. And you just immediately, you embrace our children. You take them in. I mean, you have really modeled what God does. And I can't say that I've always immediately, because I'm a thinker by nature, so I have to process what's going on. I get there, but that's not my immediate response. And you have that. That's like a knee-jerk response. Like, if you just open them wide, bring them in, and that's just what you do. I don't know if that's part of your recovery. I don't know, I've tricked that, but what?
I'll let you in on something. That doesn't mean that I have a multiplicity of emotions that are going.
But your highest emotion is to bring them in.
Yes. But that doesn't mean I'm disappointed, that I'm angry, that I'm frustrated, that
even
or sad, or how we're gonna pick up pieces. I try to model just some of the things that I would expect to be done to me.
so beautiful. See, this is why I love y'all. Wasn't that beautiful? And it was genuine. I've seen it. I don't vacillate in truths. So I wouldn't say this if it wasn't true, but I've seen you do that. And I just appreciate this interview. I appreciate doing life with you. It is a learning experience. We have our ups and downs, more ups than downs. At this stage of our lives, we are really settling nicely. And I appreciate God for that. But you have really been an example of godly manhood. No, you're not perfect, but then you wouldn't be able to deal with us if you weren't, because we're imperfect. So perfection is not a prerequisite for being loved on or being a good father, because you taught us that you're moving on to perfection.
And I want to put it in the context for you, because you said perfection. Perfection in the Bible is maturity. It's always represented maturity. It doesn't mean, because the challenge is, here's the challenge. Perfect is based upon, I heard this from a person, based on the eye of the beholder, which you may count as perfect, may not be perfect to me. And in essence, that means that if you count it perfect and I don't count it perfect, it's left up to opinion and assumption. Right. But if we understand that we are all maturing, there's an expectation of responsibility that comes with maturity, not the picture of that the frame is a certain way or the painting is a certain way. No, that becomes opinionated, and you may find that I may see as a dab of paint. Oh, it doesn't seem that great to me, but for some person, that's a perfect painting. Right. And so it's based on, when we look at it from the biblical standpoint, it is the level of responsibility of how I respond. And how I respond, and God is always looking at our responses, which reflect his image.
Right.
And so my response is, what is love? It's based on my response. What is forgiveness? It's based on my response. It's the actions that I take. What is reconciliation? It's based on my response. It's the actions that I take.
Right.
And so these are the things that, as we grow, there's a level of expectation.
Right.
To mature. There's a level of expectation. So if I'm the parent, I can't act like the child.
Well, I think that's a good place to end this. Mic drop. Mic dresses. Yeah, that's how you summate that. And lastly, can you do us a favor? Short, speak a word of hope to wives who are struggling, to men who are struggling, wives and children who are struggling because of the developmental status of the men in their life. Or because of their own development. What's the word of hope to sure give all of us kind of
I want you to hope to every man. I want you to understand something. You got what it takes because God made it that way. You may not know, you may not have the tools, but God has provided for you an opportunity that you can know. If you have somebody that's out there that you respect, especially, I would suggest that you get with somebody that is a godly man, a man that is firm in his foundation. He's firm in his convictions. He's firm in his faith and his loyalty to God. That is where it starts. But when you understand that, the Bible tells us, heaven and earth shall pass away, but his word is forever established. His word is so good that the information that God has given us for us to live by, it is able to help you to develop as a man, as a husband, as a father, as an appropriate person to stand in the responsibility that you have. You may have children out of wedlock. I'm going to tell you right now, every child that you have out of wedlock, those children, they need their father. They need a man to help them to understand what life is. In your role, you can actually determine an outcome and create a system that they can stand on. You as a woman, if you have a husband that may not be strong as a man, they call them beta males, encourage him to read the word of God, encourage him to stand up to be the man. It's okay. I know sometimes women that you feel fearful because of whatever circumstances and the background and the things that you came from. But trust the fact that God will help your husband, help your man to develop, to become the man that God wants him to be. That's the role that he plays. Because when you allow him to be that man, he will be the protector. He will be the provider. He will be the cultivator. He will be the one that you don't have to step up and take charge. God will develop him to be the one, because he has to be an intricate part of this process in developing a system that your children can thrive, that your household can thrive. And so you need just really trust the process and trust the fact that God is a developer. God is a teacher. God is a mentor, and he will move upon people's hearts to help your husband, to help your son. You may have a son that you may need somebody to be in their lives to help them to develop them, or daughter, because the reality is that society is what it is because we have less men standing up and being responsible in society as a man. A lot of these things that are happening in our day, we wouldn't happen if you had mature men standing up and taking care of business, whether in their homes, whether on their jobs, whether out in society. We need men to stand up. And you could trust the fact that God has a perspective, an idea of what a good, mature man should be. Trust the process, and God has it in place. And I want to just last words for every man that is out there that may have had a sketchy past, or their father has not been there, or you've had some challenges within your own life, there is a recovery process. And there is a lesson for you that God is going to put you on this path to help you develop, because he wants every man to step in and step into the role that he's called you to be the man that he is designed for you to be.
Okay. And I'd like to say, don't give up on your husband,
Don't give up.
your boss.
Yes, you got what it takes.
Yeah.
In
Admit it.
men, there's an old saying. I heard this: hard times creates hard men. Hard men creates soft times. Soft times creates soft men. Soft men create hard times.
Wow. So it's a durational thing.
Right. And so you have what it takes. If God made you to be a biological male,
Say so, sir.
a biological male, you have what it takes.
What it takes.
You have what it takes.
I love that. You have what it takes. God bless you. Thank you for joining us.
God bless.